In the words of James Rowley. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome back to another Lost the Plot video. This time we've got a little something different for you. It's me and Thomas. No, we've not done this before.
Yeah.
Completely unbeknown to anybody. New experience for both of us, but we're excited.
We've spent some time together on our own before, but it's the first time we've done it on camera.
Yeah, first time that we want to disclose.
Okay. All right.
Anyway, we're here today to talk to you about one of the... I'm trying to figure out how to describe it. One of the most drawn out
Yeah.
sort of marketing of a film. Highly anticipated sequel to an half-decent film 13 years ago. That is Avatar: The Way of Water.
13 years. Well, we've waited 13 years, 3 hours and 12 minutes.
Very true.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the runtime in a moment. I have no doubt, as one of the many things that we are going to discuss. But yeah, this is going to be a quick whistle-stop review of Avatar: The Way of Water that we have, as we've just said, waited 13 years for, and for me didn't live up to its expectations. What about you, Tom?
No. I mean, it helps being kind of indifferent about it in the first place. But I feel like there's a lot of people in that boat.
Yeah. I don't know if have you read any reviews?
No, to be fair, I've kept away from a hell of a lot, and I was looking to go in fairly blind, and that really helped. I think I'd have come out even more flat.
Yeah.
Through all of this.
No, I think you're right.
If I knew anything about the film.
I was sat next to Alex, and I said the only trailer that I saw was I think it was the 30-second teaser trailer that they're shown in cinemas. Yeah. Was it 6 months ago or however long it was? That was the only trailer that I was sort of exposed to, which I'm quite happy with because I quite like going into films blind now. But also, I didn't really know what to expect. It wasn't great. The reviews are quite mixed. I say mixed. There's a lot going, it's amazing, and there's like a handful that are going absolutely terrible.
Yeah. And I just think, I mean, in a sense, like neither are going to be really painting it in the right way. I think if you're not going to want to go see it. But things like this, especially with the anticipation and the wait, these over a decade waiting for it, it sort of builds to this thing where it's a franchise that's not a franchise. It's getting treated, because of all this time, it's getting treated like it's the next Star Wars film. And I mean, that's going to be different for everyone, but say, as a big Star Wars fan, then obviously I still probably enjoyed some of the lesser enjoyed Star Wars films to something like this. Yeah. And it seems a lot of it is just that expectation, the wait, just really getting people on an edge, which is probably bringing out the worst in the reviews. Yeah, because it's people going, I've waited this long and I didn't like it, or it's, I've waited this long, I finally got it.
Yeah. No, I like that. That's a great point to make. Well, before we get into the positives and negatives of Avatar: The Way of Water, we're going to give it a quick score out of 10. If you've seen our Instagram, you already know an average score of us three that went. Matt has refused to watch it. Not really bothered about it. Weren't bothered about the first one either.
Have some confidence.
Yeah. So Matt's abstained from watching it. James despised it, hence why he's not here.
Yeah. To be fair, he probably knew it going in.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So right, you go first, Tom. Out of 10, give it a score.
A 6. 6 out of 10.
Mine is also a 6 out of 10. I feel like we have quite similar views from speaking after it. This is one of the only films that we've Me, you, James have been to
Probably.
see together.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a moment. Should have took a picture. Anyway, right. Let's talk about the film. We'll start with the positives because these are quite specific and there are fewer positives than they are negatives that we want to talk about. And again, there are more negatives. We're not going to sit and absolutely slate the film, but there are things that we didn't like, didn't agree with, weren't necessarily necessary in the film or enhanced it at all. But we'll talk about those. We'll talk about the positives. And can we just say, beautiful.
On the whole.
On the whole.
Yeah.
And what beautiful, I'm talking about cinematography, visuals, CGI. I feel like first Avatar in 2009 was peak CGI, and I feel like you're not going to get better than that in the next 30 years. Really.
It was one of those tipping points.
Yeah.
I mean, we always describe it, again, I'm bringing Star Wars into the mix, but we're talking about fantasy films, so it may as well. But that as this big expectant sort of movement when episode 3 came out. I mean, everyone will talk about, they'll just talk about the green screen scenes where it's just two people walking down a corridor, but you know it's just in a green room. Yeah, that's not the examples that anyone's on about. But on the whole, and again, we're saying this on the whole, that marked such a point. It was like that 2005 mark where everything before it was like trying, but they didn't want to do too much because they couldn't use much of the budget.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it broke that open. It was like, this is what you can do when you throw in everything at it. And I love those moments. And obviously Avatar was another version of that. And I mean, you do get, I'm sure it was about the first one, James Cameron saying the whole, if you haven't seen it in IMAX, you haven't seen it. And I mean, I joke about that, saying like, you should have just made a better film. But I like the fact that like when you've got these tipping points of this is the new stuff, this is the peak of what we can do. Let's show it off to as many people as we can. Yeah,
it's a positive because the film is amazingly made. James Cameron's very good at that. He's makes
picked up on
good films.
Where that began,
but I also think that leads into a negative in a sense of speaking, that because it's used CGI and all these filmmaking techniques so well, they've tried to show it off probably a little bit too much.
Yeah.
In the sense that it detracts then from the story that they're trying to portray, which ultimately is what we go and watch the film for.
Yeah, and some of these great points, great moments, and like techniques they might have used fell out of favour for this spectacular stuff, where it wasn't just the stuff that was actually crafted really well, it was just the real dramatic moments, and it's just like, yeah, you get a lot of it, but that's why we're saying like on the whole, but when you look at that, that's on the whole of a 3-hour movie.
Yep.
So how many breaks in that are you letting slide by, whereas in like a 90-minute 2-hour film you might be kicking off more, saying, they missed this, this and this. It allows you to always be more lenient, which it's a good trick, but it's not necessarily like a positive or a negative. It's a weird one.
Yeah. Right. So first positive, it's a beautiful film. Cinematography is brilliant.
There's a lot in there.
There's a lot in there to take in, and it's. I feel like the shots used under the water, it is that they are beautiful to see, and it is fantastic filmmaking.
I think that's probably the biggest of what we were just saying in terms of just like a visual, just like how is this? Are you making something that's beautiful, just spectacular? Then that is like particularly that first underwater scene that you can really talk about. It's literally everything shut up. They just did it. They just let everything go, and it was like they were really being creative with it, because that was the thing where this. And I was really hopeful then, and it didn't necessarily like keep to that too much, but on the whole, the underwater scenes were probably some of the better ones because they were being fun with it.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Like the first, I think, in Avatar, what I really remember from it and drew from at the time was they're really playing with scale, and like, be it from human to the Na'vi, like the difference in that. As soon as you saw it, it was this like they really were creative with how to show that, and then albeit just the like grand scale of the planet itself, or the ships and all the architecture, that kind of stuff. Whereas this pulled away from that, which I still think they could have really had fun with. So it almost surprised you then when you saw certain bits that did hark back to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd happily add more of the playfulness of the underwater scenes and just really sort of the confidence in that.
Yeah, I agree. First positive, done. Next one I want to talk about, and I asked you specifically to talk about it in the Instagram stories, were the action sequences, which were genuinely compelling and entertaining in the sense that they were violent, they were quite brutal at times, and it felt like we actually saw the skills of the actors and actresses
Yeah.
to create these battle sequences that I thought they were absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that's more important when you are dealing with something that's this big fantasy flashy spectacle where you've got CGI, but not only just an abundant use of CGI that's obvious to the audience, but when you're getting in the way of that actor acting. It's like it can be said about, say, I know when everyone was going mad about the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies after No Way Home, people were harking back to how literally the physical performances and stuff. And obviously there's less of that with this because you are seeing the actors' faces with motion capture and stuff, but there is still these massive barrier. So these physical performances really shine, but also really need to, because if they didn't, you would have that. It is literally what just physically brings you into it. It's because you really need to avoid any moment where a viewer like us is gonna snap out of that immersion and just, because it's so easy to when you're dealing with something that's so
definitely
crazy.
Yeah.
So that really worked for this. Even when something wasn't logical, that was the point. Like something that happened where it didn't matter if something was quite off or like all these things that we might point out as negatives. When you've got something that was as active as that to keep you engaged, it was similar to what we just said about the beautiful, say, underwater scenes, anything like that, where they just let it take shape and let it do its job. They didn't sort of have to punctuate it with this wedge bitting of story or character or anything like that. It was just, this is a different purpose, and let's go like full bore, and it did.
No, it definitely did, and there was a specific moment I want to draw attention to. Is it Neytiri towards the very end where she's spoiler, she's lost her son and she's just completely lost it call wise, and I thought that part where she loses all control of herself I thought was fantastic.
And that's sort of what I was referring to then, is these things that don't necessarily, it's not that they don't make sense, it's just that was absolutely great, irrespective of the fact that even in the couple of hours that you had before that, there wasn't as much winding up as you felt you needed for a character to get to that point. But the actual scenes themselves and how that was executed, like I can't fault. And also because when something like this would happen, be it at the start of the movie or wherever, some of these scenes would take place, you generally did want more of it.
Yeah, definitely.
It wouldn't have mattered, even in a film as long as this, if the bulk of it were these no dialogue action scenes. That would have been completely fine. Obviously, that's where all the money is just going to get not funneled, it's going to get lost there, because there's so much to do. So you understand why it's not, but they were the things where I was unquestionably fixed on what was going on.
Yeah, 100%. There was those specific scenes and were like you've said, were the most immersive in my opinion, as well as obviously what we've already talked about with the underwater CGI and the shots, brilliant. But I feel like the action sequences really glued this film together. Yeah. I feel like if you were with action sequences, you want to say if you take them out of the film, really how much is lost, because sometimes, a lot of the time in films like
Yeah.
this, they just throw random action sequences in there to try and
Just to
keep you
give it,
engaged.
like, yeah.
But I feel like if you were to take these out of the actual film itself, the film loses a hell of a lot,
Yeah.
because what these action sequences and conflicts was a stepping stone for the story, albeit very simple and quite repetitive to the first one, but also the action sequences were integral to the actual storytelling of the film. So without them, I'm gonna go out on a limb, they were the best parts about this film.
Yeah.
The action sequences, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's what's stayed with me since watching it.
Yep.
And because I haven't picked fault with it, I'm thinking, well, be it just on a real technical perspective of like these unseen people that have worked on this film, that's where these are going to shine.
Yep.
And then also, like we're saying, the physicality of the actors, the performers, all of these, everything's come together in these pieces, whereas in a lot of the other areas of the film, things were lacking, or things had been left behind, or favoured, or one thing favoured over another, which was actually sorely missed. So
Yeah.
it's just like...
No, I like it. So, two positives we've talked about. It was absolutely beautiful, well-made film, and action sequences. Is there anything else you want to add before we go on to the negatives? Because we're going to have to try and get through them as quick as we possibly can.
And I mean, it's sort of a given, but it bridges the gap between positive and negative, because it'd be the casting, which was obviously a great point in the original, but a lot of that is just carried on to this. But we are getting a lot of new characters, and for the whole, again, it's this whole thing. On the whole, it was a great move. These probably largely unknown for a lot of people, especially when you're dealing with these actors who aren't going to have their face plastered across a movie. And to bring some of these, say, especially the younger characters.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I'd like reuse of Sigourney Weaver, which we said, and this is why it bridges the gap between negatives.
I was going to go into that next.
How's that voice going to translate for a younger character? But then other characters maybe took up a similar amount of screen time. I think it's a bold move to then sort of have this character that is, you're not going to be remembered for your face. You're going to be remembered for this alien character, basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, to carry that, especially when you're going to be struggling with, say, a story that's probably not giving you too much, or dialogue that's not giving you too much, to actually have that finally look the part in the final film still shone. But I think that's just going to be the case with like a lot of movies of this scale, so it's not too much of a compliment.
Yeah, I get
It was
what you're
always
saying.
going to draw big names, but I think for one of the biggest names, and this is where I can sort of tip into the negatives now, is I joked about it, but like Kate Winslet being
She was a mother.
the mother, wife of the chief of the... What name did they call it?
I'm not even going to attempt it because it'll offend someone somewhere.
Metkayina, yeah, it's Avatar, but that was their whole thing. Oh, let's literally just avoid this concept of offending people.
The voice that she puts on as well. You spoke about this quite brilliant. The voice that Kate Winslet puts on is sort of that voice where you think, I can do this because it might not offend people, because it's a half-arsed sort of accent. Because they were going for was it Maori sort of,
and I think that's the
vibes with these.
I mean, everyone could guess it from like, even if you watch that 30-second trailer, it's like, okay, you've got these like this slightly different approach, and you're gonna have this sea-based society, and it's like, well, yeah, you're going to be drawing on a lot of inspirations from Pacific Islanders, and which is a really fun visual to work with and be creative with. But whereas something, say, like even something as daft as like a Marvel film like Black Panther, where we've seen them adapting African cultures and now South American cultures in directly fantastical ways. It's not trying to necessarily be historically accurate, but it's doing one of these things where it's still drawing from those cultures, but still in a sense where you're making them the important part of it. Whereas to just lean too heavy into something like this, which is purely trying to depict something alien, it is just a cheap sort of thing. But then it's also the excuse that a lot of people are going to have for something as seemingly minor as us just joking about Kate Winslet's casting. It's just like, I'm not going to get up in arms about it, but it just seems so daft ways. Like you first see it, and if you're ignoring the chief somehow with the very sort of like, yeah, cool looking, but not necessarily original face tattoos and the structure of everything that they're sort of designed around. And she just speaks in that sort of like, it's a different voice, but I'm not going to go too leaning towards any earthly accent.
Yeah.
It just reminds me, like, I'm speaking about Marvel again now, but like Elizabeth Olsen when she did Scarlet Witch, she said about Sokovia, just going, we need to sound Eastern European, and she was just going like, and she was sort of joking about, well, yeah, you sort of draw from this, draw from that, but it's like you're coming up with a country that doesn't exist. And even that, it's like, yeah, you're coming up with a country that doesn't exist, and it has like a direct point, but that's almost more acceptable, even though you're dealing with like a real obvious earthly example. When you're trying to pretend that you're not, but then still obviously using that example, especially then a couple hours into the film, you've got the warriors up in arms about something, and they're literally just sticking their tongue out, sort of like running about.
Yeah.
And really being really performative with almost like this dance that they're going into. It's like you're obviously drawing from these things, so it's like you can't have that argument then that she's just playing an alien or she's doing this, because you're
drawing from a specific bit of culture.
These are basically the Maori.
Yeah.
It's just,
and I want to stick with characters for a little bit. So we've touched on. We've talked about Kate Winslet. Tom's got really into it there. But also, I didn't appreciate the bringing back of Stephen Lang. I thought the way in which, and it links to the story as well, because the story is a repeat of the first film, basically, and we'll talk about that very briefly in a second. But the way that the prologue at the start was absolutely horrendous, in my opinion. The first 15 minutes of the film,
generally tried to cut it out of my brain.
Honestly, it was the exposition was so forced, and it was like saying, trying to explain everything that had happened to make you sort of go, and accept it and run with the story. In my eyes, for me, it failed massively because it felt so forced. There were a lot better ways to introduce everything that I wanted to talk about. And Stephen Lang's character, what was it, Quaritch, whatever his name is, horrendous way to introduce him, I thought. I thought it was so half-assed and sort of you're expecting the audience to accept it. I hated it. Sigourney Weaver, love her to bits. I think she's brilliant in the first film, if I'm being honest. And again, I'm going on to the story now a little bit. The way in which it explains that, spoiler, she has a child, and we're just willing to accept that as well. It doesn't really touch on it much other than that. Annoyed the hell out of me. Yeah. Unless they're waiting for it for a second film, but there was so much attention drawn to it at the start. I thought that was one of the questions we were going to get answered. And trying to get used to her voicing a child, pretty much, is one of the most...
She's just got such a strong voice.
It's a distinct voice that you know who it is as soon as they speak. And the fact that she's voicing a child is so hard to comprehend in my head.
The stupid thing is, as much as it was cartoonish enough to fit this kind of film, doesn't have, as much as it has a lot of time, hours worth, it doesn't have the time to be too serious about certain things and really pick apart things. It was cartoonish enough, like a depiction of a teenage girl. I mean, obviously, one, she's an actor, she's a good actor. It's like, but as well, she was a teenage girl at one point, so it's like, well, yeah, she can sort of pass that off convincingly well. But then obviously you got this really strong voice coming out that hasn't really been changed enough. Because I mean, she sounds different now than she did in even something like Aliens. and obviously went from when she was even younger than that, probably. So yeah, it's these odd immersion breaks that just could have been so easily avoided.
Agreed. And I'm gonna carry on.
Yeah.
I liked the sons and daughters that were introduced.
Yeah.
I didn't mind them as characters at all. One character that I have a gripe with is Spider. Yeah. He's a character that is in the film that doesn't really have a purpose. There's no goal for this character. There's no real reason for him to be there, because even as he goes throughout the film, his actions contradict himself anyway. So he goes from thinking that he's a Na'vi to then going... Oh,
and also clearly doesn't.
Yeah, 100%. He feels like he belongs there, his family. But then also his dad comes back and then he's like, oh, I'm not going to help you, blah, blah, blah. And then literally teaches them what to do and how to do it. Yeah. And then is surprised when they go and massacre and burn down other island villages. Yeah. And then even at the end, I thought he was going to let his dad die and that would have been a character arc and we sort of really see where his loyalties lie. We didn't get that. He saved him still. So we still don't really understand this character and what his motives are and what he's thinking. And for the whole film, he just really annoyed me. And the fact that they didn't just shoot him the first moment where he caused a bit of a hindrance really irritated me, because that would have just got rid of him and I'd have been chuffed with it.
It's his face. Just irritating.
It was a stupid character.
And he's and again, I've already been on about Kate Winslet.
Yeah.
I'm the one with long hair, but he's just a white boy with dreadlocks.
Yeah, he is. And also, talking about characters, I love Zoe Saldana. I think she's incredible. The first film, it did a fantastic job of encapsulating a strong female lead character. In this film, I don't feel like we had that.
Yeah.
I feel like in this, she is basically a mother. That's her role, which I understand, but also does nothing for her empowerment. I feel like her character takes a backseat.
Oh, definitely, but it could have been it
could have been amazing. I was so excited.
We joked about it before. It's just like someone was commenting about like it was the trailer and it's the shot where she's pregnant, shooting the bow. It's the little joke of like, oh, she goes into the bump, but which is again cartoony and daft, but still.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's the joke like, oh, he can only James Cameron's only really going to come up with these female characters that are like mother figures, and it's not to say it's going to be like a written rule, but obviously loads of people have obviously joked the same, but what it actually interested me with, and as the movie began, I figured that was actually going to be... I wanted to at least see that happen. As much as I thought, oh yeah, it's going to be a cliche, it's going to be this, that and the other, I thought, well, I actually want to see it now. But when you didn't get that, it literally meant that there was nothing to what she was doing.
Yep.
They have like the one... I mean, it's coming back to that scene that we were praising about, of sort of losing it. And really showing that rage, which, praising the action scene, but purely in terms of the character itself, that was probably one of the stronger character moments. But the fact you have to pick out an extreme like that as the best character moment makes you really call into question what that character had been doing for the rest of the film. Yeah,
I felt... and again, links to characters, because that's what we're talking about, as well as story that basically... we've slated, which correct, story simple and childish, and we'll quote James in a minute. I just wanted more from her, and the fact she was basically made to take a back seat. People will disagree with me, disagree with all you want. She wasn't as prominent as she was in the first film, and I don't know if that's because the amount of characters that they introduced, that wasn't a possibility, because there are a lot of character arcs that you sort of need to start and develop, which I understand.
Partly that.
But also, without her, you don't have this second film. because there should still be a big focus on Natiri and my Jake. Like, and I didn't get that as much as I wanted, as much because I love Zoe Saldana. I love the character of Natiri in the first one. This one, not so much.
Yeah, you get
annoying.
A lot of this time for a lot of new characters, but time is dedicated to these stories. But the fact that she's just we're saying this, but she's a great example in this film of both the faults and the positives of characters, story, design, everything, because you're not getting the most out of this really important part. It'd have been much better and much sort of more respectful and understanding of her impact in the first story. If there was, hypothetically, example like a story where the clear divisions between her and Jake, especially when he's had to take up on the war mantle again after thinking they were like peaceful again, and he's basically showing his humanity again. He's just coming back as like, oh, he's a soldier boy. He's going through all this sort of routine and the whole how he's raising his kids. They have one argument about leaving the forest for their safety, and then they're leaving, and then you sort of probably see it with Jake, but it's really the two other older kids, because the younger one doesn't really get a look in. She's just the young kid.
She's the hindrance.
Yeah.
She's basically what makes a situation a serious situation. If she's not there in the film, half of the serious moments aren't serious.
They've got a baby with them. Oh, this is terrible.
It's a joke.
I mean, you saw their change, but then to end the movie on like with sea people.
Yeah.
Big turnaround. And this almost meaningful. There's more going on than we've even experienced. And you've just got Natiri smiling there, and basically just smiling. That's literally all she's there for. It's like, fair enough. You're going to call it back in another 13 years and say, oh yeah, this is just like Jake's perspective, but then we're going to throw in a bit more of this division and explain it all.
Yeah. In the words of James Rowley, it's just the first film, but they get a bit wet. That is it. And we've touched upon it, and we're going to try and wrap this up fairly soon, because I've got a little bit passionate about it and a little bit annoyed. The film's story, I've said it twice already, very simple and also very repetitive to the first one. You hit the nail on the head.
Did I?
Sky people come down for no reason whatsoever other than their own greed, and the fact that they say, Earth's dying, we need a new home. You said it, you can't even breathe on this planet.
Also James originally.
Oh, was it James?
I sort of maybe built on the point.
What an absolute scholar. Can't even breathe on the planet.
So you thought he was just angry about it?
That was in the prologue as well. The stupid 15 minutes. Oh, we're happy. Oh, Sky people. Shut up, tart. The fact that he refers to them as Sky people as well annoys me, because he is a human. Idiot.
All this like...
Oh my God.
I'm Na'vi. That needs to be called into question. That would be such a great conflict between them and between the families as a whole. It's like, look, this isn't right. Like, even if it does come to this grand fantasy, bringing everyone together at the end, you just imagine like Natiri and him like part ways, for lack of a better term, because genuinely there's just a lot of problems going on.
Yeah.
She sweeps in like the fourth or fifth film, however many films are going to be, and she's brought all the forest people back in. He's got the sea people with him. They're all going nuts and taking the planet back. Yeah. It's not going to happen.
No, might do, because genuinely, I'm interested to see what they do with the third one and the fourth one, and then how many ever bloody supposed to be. But then they're forced to leave, and they go to a new place with water. We're introduced to important creatures.
A world unto itself.
There we go.
Was pretty much the word they described as they're flying into the sea people territory.
There we go. And then we see all of the learning and training sequence again.
They all know English, by the way.
Yeah. I'm sorry, fuming, because there was a distinct point made in the first film that only specific people could speak English due to Sigourney Weaver's character, can't remember her name, teaching them, because that's when they had a relationship and a bond, which since then the bridges had been burnt. Understandable. And now they've gone to what was it, a world...
Yeah, I think the quote was like they're a world unto themselves or something like that. Whereas, Jake's narration that again was pointless and
Shocking.
and spoken a bit. I know we're speaking into a microphone now, but it was basically like a bro podcast where it's like those teen dramas or something.
Yeah.
Every line that someone utters has to be this grand statement, and that's basically what a lot of that sound, because his voice is like that anyway. It's like he's speaking like everything is so meaningful and purposeful.
Incorrect. So everyone can speak English. Irritating. I hated it. And, Tom. So, and I have this problem with films. So, I love an action sequence. When done well, superb. Endgame, prime example. Infinity War, prime example. Excellent. Because we weren't detracted from the fact that there was still a big battle going on. Whereas this film, you had the opposing sides head to head, and there was that moment of tension, suspense, so to say. And then they go at it because the whale jumps on the boat. And then, after 30 seconds, it might even be a minute, we are supposed to accept the fact that everyone else has gone home and there is just a focus on Jake, Neytiri and their family. And everyone else is null and void and just appear 20 minutes later.
Or just part of the battle that we're not going to get to
joke.
See.
Hate it. And it did an awful job of that. Disgusting behaviour.
Especially with the whole capabilities of the fact that the big part of this was they're new people in this new place and aren't going to be as good. Like, you imagine seeing this new territory and you've got the people that are masters of that place sweeping in. You didn't get to see them fight.
No, you didn't get to see their capabilities at all, other than the fact they can ride animals, which it's in their biome, you'd expect
Avatar.
them to. Yeah, joke.
Let's use our freaky little tail things.
And again, James would be disappointed if we didn't mention it. Do you want to do it in the words of James?
Yeah. So, speaking of whales, Loak was the son, wasn't it?
Loak was the son. Liked his character.
Yeah.
One of the few that I liked.
Yeah,
Brilliant story arc. Carry on.
So, ends up meeting this whale. Goes back to tell everyone, he's met this whale. After swimming, having a nice...
For a considerable amount of time.
Probably about, your 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Goes back. I've met this whale. They've got problems with that. Goes back. Swims and plays with the whale again for about 10, 15 minutes. Yeah.
It's such a waste of life.
It's the speaking.
We've not. My God, we've not even talked about that. Go on.
Yeah, the dialogue.
Get it in quickly.
The dialogue
Come on.
as a whole, but let's start with the whale. That was when I could just sit back and relax and go, and have to convince myself, okay, I'm watching a kids film. I'm watching a Disney fairy tale, just to make it more palatable, because again, as much as out of touch as it might be, they had a ground idea in the first film of like what this whole spirituality they were going for, and it was safe enough because it was vague enough, but it was drawing from enough real world to make it believable. But it felt like this. You still could have that immersion because you were just following these very simple rules. All of that implication got taken away when you've got two different species just chatting to each other. With sign language, no less. The water people use to talk to whales underwater.
They're not obviously whales. We can't remember their name.
There's a saying. It was the whalers who end up saying that they're like way more intelligent. And that's fine for the whale, but what does that mean for the Na'vi that he used in the type of sign language to talk to the whale? It doesn't matter if the whales are more intelligent. If they can't sign back to you, if you're just like, you understand them through their musical sort of speech.
Don't look at me, mate.
But and again, they're coming up with all these assumptions, but the implication that the connection between them, again, with these freaky head tails, that's enough to say, like, well, yeah, they would understand each other. You've got this physical almost connection, and you get that, like, the pain was almost shared to some degree, and then, yeah, it almost just came as a package deal that you are. It's not metaphorical. It's just blatantly just showing you are at one with the natural world or something. But when you've just got them chatting to each other, completely takes that away. So all the spirituality of the first film just completely like died in this one.
Yeah, I agree. There's, Jesus, give it a 6. I feel like I want to give it less.
That's gonna happen. We're always just gonna. We've got the negatives and we just.
Yeah, but because with that we don't really. Like I say, we do these videos because it gives us a platform and a sort of environment where we can discuss, like, about the film in depth. Look, which we don't. We do in person, but probably not to the extremes that we have done.
Yeah.
But genuinely, for a film that needs to make $2 billion to break even, that we've been made to wait 13 years for, that has all of the anticipation and expectation behind it, to then basically repeat the storyline from the first film and basically just have it underwater, to not give Neytiri a proper storyline, in my opinion.
On a real world point, the actor's chance to act in a movie that already hinders their ability to act.
Yeah.
Which is why we're praising the physical, because the dialogue gave them nothing.
Dialogue was shocking. I just feel like this was such a letdown. And I feel like it. And I'm from a film watcher's perspective, amazing, good action sequences, storylines tosh.
The positives can't be praised enough, but the fact is there's this finite point.
Yeah.
Whereas these negatives, it connects to every little bit.
Yeah, every single little bit.
And that's why we feel like we're just shattering it apart.
Yeah, and I feel like it links to something you said, and to finish this off, it links to something you said, that the fact that people will only think this is successful because of the way in which it's been marketed, and the fact that we've had to wait for so long, and there's such an anticipation behind it. It's like The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
One of the most successful Star Wars, if not, no, sorry, the highest grossing Star Wars film, isn't it? The Force Awakens. Yet, it's a repeat of A New Hope.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if you were to probably break down the film, it's so unoriginal, it's ridiculous. So I feel like this again is very similar, and I'm interested to see what they do with the third and the fourth film, because apparently James Cameron has already filmed scenes for it because he doesn't want the Stranger Things effect. Just focus on writing a good storyline, mate. I'm gonna suggest to James Cameron. Yeah, you make more. You make millions. Yeah, you've won awards. Yeah. We don't care.
And as far as like a good, honest attempt to spread your message about how much you love the sea and conservation and whales specifically, and Sigourney Weaver, there's a documentary series on Disney Plus that he produced, and he even gets a bit of a helicopter moment at the end of each episode where he just gets to like talk about his favourite moment. Just go watch that. You get more out of that than that. It's just tell the actual message.
Yeah, the message.
Don't have to wrap it up in this fantasy film.
The messages get so lost, and serious moments get ruined by shocking dialogue and stupid one-liners. Why are filmmakers deciding to do this? Because it's really, really irritating me, to a sense that it's ruining films. Like, it's ruining moments in films, like, and really detracting from the message, the suspense, the immersion of the audience. I just find it so sloppy and weak when writing a film. Could I do it better? Probably not. Hence why I'm sat here. But it just really, really annoys me. So, I think we should finish it there for our burst of blood vessel, I think.
Yeah.
We've managed to talk about a lot.
Yeah.
Like, we have talked about a lot, and it probably will be a lengthy...
A lot to talk about.
Yeah. It will be a lengthy video because, like I say, there's a lot
It's
to
a
talk
long
about.
film.
It's a long film, so it's
if
only
you've watched-
fitting.
If
Yeah.
you've watched Avatar, because the only reason you're going to be watching this video, you can sit through whatever we've just spoke about.
Yeah, and even if you haven't watched Avatar and you just want to have a little gander at what it's about, feel free to make your own opinions when you watch it. And let us know down in the comments what you think, feel, decide for yourself. But ultimately, I was let down by it. You weren't overawed by the thing. James absolutely despised it, and Matt doesn't care enough to watch it himself.
Honestly, my respect for him went through the roof.
Yeah.
Like, you got to just draw your line
Yeah.
somewhere.
So that's what you get from the Lost the Plot, boys. Thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, well done. You deserve a medal or some sort of congratulations. Leave in the comments if you did. Okay? Write the word sausage in the comments, and then I'll be able to see who's made it this far within the video. All right? Thank you for watching. We do appreciate it. We hope you enjoyed that and found it insightful. We'll see you in the next one. We are going to try and be more frequent. Try. It's difficult to get us in front of a camera at this current time period in our life, but we will do it. We do appreciate everyone that watches, subscribes, follows. Thank you very much. See you in the next one.
Bye.